Um, Dhruv, over to you for the next talk.
Good morning, folks. I believe you can hear me. Everybody can hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, and can you see my slide deck?
Not yet. Yes, now we can.
Perfect. Good morning, folks. Thank you for having me here and spending a few hours of your weekend with us. I'm quite privileged to be presenting and really privileged to be presenting with people like Derek and Brian and Kader and others. So thanks for all of that. I am Dhruv Chandra, and I'm responsible for governance and compliance in RBC when it comes to cloud. And that includes things like cybersecurity, regulatory adherence, educating our internal teams, working with all the 3 lines of defenses on a day-to-day basis. And here I am presenting the aspect of cybersecurity when it comes to NFI space. So financial institutions and cybersecurity. So what is it about financial institutions and cybersecurity? Just a second. I do not know why my screen is not seem to working, but give me 1 second. So financial institutions and cybersecurity. So why is cybersecurity important to financial institutions? So a quick statement is, that is where all the money is. So as a bank, banks worldwide drive about $1 trillion of transactions a day, and it becomes quite lucrative for cyber criminals to actually leverage these transactions for their own personal gains. In addition to that, all the banks are deemed as critical Canadian infrastructure. So we are very, very heavily regulated. And since there is a lot of regulation, both from an OSFI and PIPEDA point of view, privacy and protecting people's hard-earned money, it becomes critical and primary for us to ensure that we are not only protecting hard-earned money of individuals, but also ensuring that people's privacy is also protected. And that's because bad threat actors and organized crimes and nexuses attack banks on per second basis. And it becomes critical for us to ensure that we leverage the best tools, technologies, and individuals to protect against things like denial of service, with others mentioned about ransomware and other financial frauds within the financial space. So what are the consequences that happen when things go bad for a financial institution, right? So one of the things that we constantly work on is ensuring that we cut down our financial losses. We ensure that we are protecting so that our reputation is in prime condition. We ensure that no identity theft happens. We ensure that fines and lawsuits are well managed within a large financial organization. I'm sure that you must have heard about things like Capital One breach and other such incidents that happen on a regular basis. So these consequences can lead to business losses and brand damage, and even in certain worst case scenarios can lead to licensing revocation. So things like OSFI and PIPEDA can actually revoke licenses of a large organization and stop them from doing financial transactions and business, which can lead to a huge business loss for large financial institutions. So what are the current state and challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis? So technology infrastructure is mostly on-prem, and Derek mentioned about how that is changing with the onslaught of cloud. It is moving into a more zero trust environment. So when on-prem is perimeter level, it is like almost like an egg, where the outer shell is really hard, but the inner component is soft and gooey. So once that break happens from a cybersecurity point of view, it is easy for a cyber threat entity to break into the entire ecosystem in an on-prem model, right? So security on cloud needs to be automated to attain velocity and to reduce time to market and stay competitive without missing out on security due diligence. Current processes and procedures are not aligned to cloud and DevOps and DevSecOps in organizations that are still maturing towards cloud and scale. The reason behind that is large banks, which have existed in countries for about 150 years, have a lot of technical infrastructure and processes and people that exist in that have invested a lot of money in tools and technologies on-prem. Moving all of that into cloud is no easy job for us. We have to ensure that when we are moving, we are protecting better, if not at the same level, when we are opening it into the cloud space. And then finally, the last point here is of real importance, right? Because lack of cybersecurity talent is worldwide and not just in Canada. And that creates a huge challenge for organizations like RBC or other financial institutions. So we struggle getting the best of breed cybersecurity talent. And it is almost impossible to hire them because A, there are very few of them, and there is already a lot of competition within the banks and within cloud and security technology companies to hire them before they even are out in the market. There are some great details here. By 2021, it is projected that there will be 3.5 million unfilled cybersecurity jobs globally. 82% of employees report a shortage of cybersecurity skills. And all this information is available on ISACA website or ISC Square website. Then cybersecurity employment rate is 0%. People may actually say that there are a lot of cybersecurity individuals which are trying to find a job, but they may not get the job at the location and at the choice of their designation, but they will get a job sooner rather than later. I have never seen a cybersecurity individual who's not had an opportunity to get a job quickly and easily. On the right side, there are some data breach statistics that talk about number of records that get stolen on a day-to-day basis. And this is 2020. And there is a link down below which talks, which you can actually go to find more details and information about that. Challenges continue for us, right? So regulatory mandates are in a state of flux right now. They are not mature when it comes to cloud requirements, which makes an FI's journey to secure cloud even harder. Real security risks versus perceived security risks also add to a lot of confusion. There are folks that think, oh, if we are doing encryption on cloud, does that mean we are less secure or more secure? So there's this perception game that goes back and forth. But these regulations are changing as we speak. We are working with the regulations and with the other banks to ensure that there is a great degree of alignment to ensure that we are all consistently focused on achieving cybersecurity, both for the organization and for our clients. To add to this, attacks are all-time high. Technologies are improving at a very tremendous pace. Derek mentioned something about it. Others mentioned something about it, that these attacks happen on per second basis, not per minute basis. they continue to rise with both speed and losses. So in 2019, the losses equated to about 11.5 billion US dollars. Now, even if these studies are grossly inaccurate, somebody can say that these numbers, how do we get them? But even if these numbers are grossly inaccurate, and even if they are 50% true, you can see that these losses and numbers are quite staggering for a bank or for any other organization per se, right? One of the other challenges a large and established organization like a bank sees is that existing on-prem technologies need a bit of tweaking, if not a major overhaul, to make it work with the cloud. And that too takes a lot of resources and skills. And to ensure that it is as secure, if not more secure in the cloud, a lot of expertise is required. And that we already know is lacking in the markets today. Again, all of this boils down to lack of skills and lack of knowledge in the cybersecurity space. On the right, you would notice that it's a bit of an eye chart of a sort, but you would notice that this was taken from ISACA, that concerns when adopting a public cloud platform and framework. You will notice that I have marked certain aspects with red, security concerns, data and data loss and leakage risks, regulatory compliance, and legal concerns. All these relate to issues with cybersecurity in financial institutions. We have to ensure that we are working on each one of them all the time. The one on the furthest right, which is boxed in kind of a yellow-orange, is again lack of expertise, both from a cloud environment as well as management staff. So if you see that cloud and cybersecurity talent is a big issue for all organizations, certainly for large financial organizations. And Brian will actually speak at greater length on this. I would like to bring to notice that Equifax, who I consulted for about a few days a little while ago, with their CISO, who is actually from NASA, they were told to pony up about $425 million of USD to help people whose data was breached. So you can see that the losses that happen if you're not cybersecurity secure and safe are quite detrimental to your business in the future. So regulatory and compliance lens. So this is what I do in the organization, and how does it relate to cybersecurity? Because all these regulatory requirements enforce good use of cybersecurity and cyber hygiene. Again, this is not a comprehensive list, but some of the regulatory concerns we deal with are PIPEDA, GDPR, CCPA, and then we also have to deal with SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley, FINRA, OSFI, SEC, and then there are some industry frameworks that we have to adhere to, such as payment card industry standards, ISO standards, CIS benchmarks. Azure actually has all these industry frameworks pre-populated in their Azure Security Center, which we leverage as a single pane of glass, which was one of the questions that was asked. And of course, it can be amalgamated with our on-prem, so our reports are generally both on-prem and on the cloud that we see on a regular basis. In addition, when cloud data is being dispersed and accessible from different regions around the world, it creates a regulatory and legal complexity and nightmare of a sort, because some of these regulatory requirements contradict each other. GDPR says, thou must forget. In US, there's Patriot Act, which can actually request for privacy data. PIPEDA says that no privacy data should be provided to any entity whatsoever. But of course, large organizations do business both in one region, in multitudes of regions, and has to adhere to all these regulatory requirements. So there's a lot of interaction with our legal team, our regulatory team, with our privacy team, certainly with our cybersecurity team. But all these have to work in one collection as a collective to ensure that we are safe and secure. One of the things we found out that most of the issues that cybersecurity professionals face or are concerned about are about data leakage, data privacy, which is regulatory specific requirement, but also important from a client point of view, and certainly confidentiality and data sovereignty, which is where the data is actually housed, where the data is actually processed, how it is processed, who owns the keys, who can actually decrypt it. All these challenges we face on a day-to-day basis. And as we juggle with these on a day-to-day, we need to ensure that these mandates are being well implemented to ensure client privacy and client data, because data and privacy today is the new currency of the world. You know, there used to be times when you could actually exchange horse cart for tools, and then later on you could exchange certain values, financial values such as gold for something else. But today you can actually trade privacy data, and a lot of legit business do that. When you sign off on something, you say that can your data be shared with some of our other business partners. That can be done. And as Adarsh put it on his last slide, you can actually package privacy data and other important data and sell it in the dark markets, which is quite lucrative and important for all the threat vectors and cyber criminals. And all of this again points to one thing, that there are a lot of job opportunities as cloud becomes ubiquitous in FI space. So what is there in the future when we talk about cloud and cybersecurity? So Derek mentioned some of it. So we are now living in a hyper-connected world already, but it is only going to become bigger and bigger as 5G becomes mass adopted and IoT becomes mass adopted. So today with IoT, you can change your thermostat setting while sitting in one room to the other or while sitting in your office. Tomorrow, it is very possible, and I'm sure things are being worked out, that medications can be administered if your Apple Watch sees arrhythmia in your heart, right? So if there is a problem and if the problem is severe, medicine may be automatically delivered. Today, we can pay by our phones. Phones have become an extension of our identity. We can pay by phones. We can transfer money by voice. We can unlock PC by facial recognition. And these devices know us. They are an extension of us. They can call on our behalf. They can order food on our behalf. And FIs are quite acutely aware of this change in the technology and change in the paradigm as to how people use their devices. And these are extensions. And are finding and exploring ways to provide the best feature sets to our clients, but also ensuring that we are conducting our due diligence to protect people's hard-earned money and protect people's privacy and other data. Then of course, zero trust, which is going to be implemented throughout, and that process is already there. Derek explained about this at length as to why zero trust is becoming more and more important in our environments. But in banks, zero trust is not only percolating into the cloud space, which is a basic NIST requirement, but also into hybrid environments. So what is happening is that all the bank's security posture is moving from a perimeter-based security to a zero trust-based security, because there is a lot of hybrid cloud technologies that are being used within large financial institutions. And Azure actually has something called Azure Stack, which you can leverage to have a hybrid environment, both on-prem and off-prem on Azure Cloud. And I do want to bring this issue with COVID, right? So we are living in unprecedented times. There is so much illness and death that has taken place. We are all acutely aware of it, but that hasn't really stopped cyber criminals. They are actually leveraging people's fears and conducting online fraud with greater intensity, and we face it on a day-to-day basis. Calls and money transfers and illegal money transfers and stuff like that. Our fraud departments deals with it on a day-to-day basis. In addition to that, pandemic-like situations may be the new normal in the future. More and more of us are working from home, and we do not know when we will go back to work the way we used to do 4 months ago. For FIs dealing with work from home and enabling security, we will need to look into all the issues and concerns that are raised because of that. How do you ensure that your home network is almost as secure as your office network? There are ways of doing that, but leveraging tools and technologies such as virtual desktop, Azure Virtual Desktop, will make life a little bit easier when it comes to work from home and making work from home secure and easy for our end users. Vastly more employees are working from home, which is dramatically expanding the attack surface of many organizations. Undoubtedly, threat actors will develop ways to penetrate corporate networks by compromising weakly defended family PCs or family networks or family devices, right? Like I already mentioned, because of IoT, everything is connected to everything. So it becomes easier because you don't have corporate strength information security and cybersecurity implemented at home, but which will become more and more crucial. As more and more businesses conduct online interactions, both small and medium businesses, as well as large e-commerce companies, will have to look into these aspects. Adoption is now soaring for online meeting and team collaboration. We are actually sitting here doing team collaborations. We are sharing important information right now, but when we actually do work from home, we share a lot of information with our clients, with our fellow workers. We have to ensure that there are good methodologies for protecting information in transit. There are capabilities that you can leverage both from a key management point of view, from an encryption point of view, and if required, you can leverage tools and technologies like Azure HSM if that is mandated by your organization or your regulatory bodies, which banks use on a regular basis. In addition to that, there is work being done to align and improve regulatory mandate and incorporate cloud and cybersecurity requirements. All the banks are collectively working with Office of Privacy Commissioner of Canada and OSFI to align rules and regulations well and articulate that clearly, which will make life easier for implementing specific controls rather than spending most of the time trying to interpret what they really mean when it comes to cloud and cybersecurity. One of the challenges large organizations face is retaining staff. So one thing is not having technical expertise to begin with, but the technical expertise that begins with which are already in the organization tend to stay there for about 2 years or so, and they move to something bigger and better. So all the banks and all the organizations are finding innovative ways to retain these technology and information security staff. Finally, security is actually everybody's job, and at least in FI. So regardless of where you exist, in which department or function within your current space, and when I'm talking you, when I'm stating you, I mean all of you who are viewing this presentation. No matter where you are or what you do, there will be aspects of cybersecurity which would be needed in your team and in your department and individually. From law team, from regulatory team, from risk management team, from every three line of defense, even from people who understand application development or understand wealth management and swift transaction, cybersecurity will become more and more important. It's everybody's job in any organization as large as a bank to begin with, but even in smaller organizations, you'll have to do exactly the same. We'll have to work together to make both online worlds safe for us, for banks, and certainly for our children. And you gals and you guys can become a part of the solution by educating yourself and learning from a lot of resources available on the internet or otherwise, and including Testoper. With that, thank you. Really appreciate that. Any questions, folks?
Wow, the speakers are just on time. 24 minutes, 36 seconds. Amazing. Thank you so much, Dhruv, for that excellent talk on cybersecurity and financial services. There are a lot of questions, a lot of comments. Some of the questions are related to a career in cybersecurity. So I guess the main intent for this session was to inspire a lot of people, and that's working. So thank you so much. And the next session is actually beautifully aligned to that. Let's quickly get to some of the questions which I saw. Let me see. There was one question from. So there was first question came from Vishal. Does organizations think separate security center of excellence is needed to mature security discipline in any company? I'd like to hear your viewpoint.
A great question. Do companies? Yes, they do. And they are working on it. My opinion is security must percolate into the entire organization. It cannot be an island of a sort. One of the challenges we've seen is if you have an island of information security or an island of cloud, it really doesn't, it is not conducive for an organization's success when it comes to adoption of cloud and cybersecurity. So you can have a center of excellence which can percolate information to every line of business within a large organization. But as I said, security has become everybody's job. You know, you are only as secure as your weakest link. So there are benefits and advantages to be had, but we are trying to change that to ensure that everybody in an organization, which is about 85,000 people strong when we talk about RBC, that everybody is cybersecurity aware. May not be an expert, but they have to become basically aware. They have to understand that. So it does help to have a center of excellence for it, but we are working on making sure that it is percolating down to the individual level.
Excellent. So then there were quite a few questions and requests to talk about DevSecOps, which we're going to probably touch on at the end of the session, because there's a great question for all three of you to really talk about the future of security, DevSecOps, and all that. So some career-related questions on that. We're going to hold on to career-related questions after Brian's talk. Let's see what else. Thanks. Again, a career or cybersecurity career-related question. We'll hold on to that question from Pankaj. We just did the viewpoint on cybersecurity center of excellence. There's a question for Derek. Let's see. Yeah. How, and another question from Vishal, how and what balance security and open banking, which consider are two end of line? How to build not with both?
I'm sorry, I don't catch that question, but I'll try to answer that, Vishal. And if I don't,
Vishal, do you just want to come off mute and just ask that question? I mean, I'm not sure whether I read it correctly or not.
No. Yeah. Thanks, Adarsh, and thanks, Dhruva, for a great presentation. The thing is that open banking concept is coming, where we are saying that, okay, I want to go in a market openly with my all API. And again, that is not a traditional security thought process. So I was thinking, I just want to hear it to you that because you are working with means big organization, I want to hear to you how that balance means looking forward some kind of a guidelines that one is saying I have to really go open, and another thing is saying no, you need to be a secured enough because anything cannot be open. So how that balance to be made, or let's say forget about open banking. Let's say open source tools. How that balance to manage that? Like to hear it from your expert view or experience.
No, Vishal, that's a great question. I think openness is primordial. It'll happen regardless whether people want it or not. It is actually happening. I mean, we are living in a hyper-connected world. I mean, my treadmill this morning knows that how many kilometers I've run, what my heart rate is. It actually shows me the email that I received from Kader saying that, oh, your meeting is coming up. So everything is already open. And there are ways of securing it. We mentioned about information security, key management. So you can have identity protection. You can have key management and encryption protection. You can have encryption in transit and at rest. Azure provides things, actually all cloud service provides these features and functionality, but secure enclave and confidential compute that you can use. You can have column level encryption. You can actually ensure that organization A cannot actually access organizations B's data or certain column information even when things are open. And that happens all the time. So provided that you leverage tools and technologies that already exist, provided that you actually conduct proper due diligence, you can have the environment as secure, if not more secure. Again, the concept of zero trust comes in. Like you have to validate, verify before you actually give access. All these features and functionalities are already there. So openness will become is an absolute. It's a given. It's almost like tax and death. It'll happen. It's only a matter of time. But leveraging the tools that already exist and are becoming more and more mature by all cloud service providers, all CASPs, we would achieve that balance perfectly well.
Thank you. Thanks.
So on that note, let's conclude the roof session. I know there are a lot of questions. I see so many questions on security, so beautifully lined up for what's going to start up next with Brian. Brian, if you don't mind, I think we've been on this call for an hour and a half. Let's take a 5 minute. It's 11:43 on my time right now. Let's get back at 11:45 for a bio, water, whatever break everyone needs. And there are so many people who are really waiting for your session. So let's be back. Let's try and be back by 11:45. By 11:46, we'll start.
Sure. Yeah, let's have a fresh start.
Yes, let's have a fresh start. And great questions. Keep the questions coming. I'm just going to share my screen in the meantime to let people know some of the programs that Testoper is offering, and we'll get going there. Okay, let's see.